You may be serving the best steak, best piece of fish, but if the service is bad, the customer forgets about how wonderful that piece of fish tasted. This is intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. It is something that you have to sort of sit back as an entrepreneur and say, this is how I am going to treat people.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of TechBite. Today we have another guest that's going to solve the employee challenges that are faced in the restaurant industry. A lot of you are already aware that the talent acquisition, retention, and obviously labor challenges are very serious in the restaurant industry, especially with a lot of things that has happened in California. Our guest lives in California, so he has firsthand experience with this rate increase and the minimum wage and everything. But the guest today is Mr. Kamyar Faron from ZippyApp, and we're going to talk about employee retention, acquisition, and how to set the culture within the restaurant so you don't lose your employees. And obviously, as we've mentioned many times, thin margins, labor challenges, and food costs are three of the biggest ones. So this plays directly into the labor challenges. So without further ado, welcome Mr. Kamyar. And before we get started, tell us a little bit more about what ZippyApp is so we set the stage before we get into the challenges faced within the industry for labor.
Hamed, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to really appreciate this platform that you're providing. It's wonderful to be here with you and your audience. So yes, ZippyApp is a comprehensive solution for frictionless talent acquisition in the service industry. Restaurants happen to be one of our largest segments that we serve, but it really is applicable to any service sector that hires typically a large number of employees at every location, and they typically experience a high turnover. So it is really a system that is designed for high speed, high volume hiring. And
Okay, makes
it
sense.
is,
So like even
yeah,
on onboarding like new location openings or just filling in positions, anything within that hospitality industry.
anything having to do with talent, we cover that, and there are many elements in the entire talent process, and addressing all of the needs is really important. So yes, we handle anything talent related.
Perfect. And I know you also own a consulting site on the other side called Talentral. Tell us a little bit more about that because I want to focus a little bit on both sides, and I want to learn the things that you're seeing in industries, the tricks, the things that the restaurants can do in order to eliminate some of the labor challenges or that they're having by implementing some of the strategies that you're seeing. You have a unique advantage because you're dealing with multiple brands. You're dealing with, I'm sure, some smaller brands, but definitely some of the larger brands. So I want to drill into some of that. So, but before we get into that, so what does Talentral do, and what is that side of business?
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a very good question. Talentrol is really a management consulting firm, and what Talentrol does is looks at your entire talent process, and it really covers everything from helping you with best recruiting practices, as well as helping you develop what we call an employer brand. So by become having an employer brand, you really become what we call an employer of choice. That will significantly reduce the hiring costs. By being a an employer of choice, it will reduce the hiring costs. And then the next component of it is addressing retention. One of the big challenges that we addressed and we touched upon was that the fact that these services such as restaurants, retail, they experience very high turnover. And there is a reason for that. And Talentrol really helps with developing and fostering a culture so that the retention is higher. And it is really not feasible to keep hiring. So you really need to address hiring as well as retention. And that is what Talentrol provides. ZippyApp is a tool that the company uses for attracting and hiring the right talent, and the processes that Talentrol introduces into your organization helps you retain.
Yeah, that's perfect. So we always say, retention is much easier. So, but we say it on the customer side, and we say, look, customer acquisition is very expensive. So obviously, talent acquisition on the other side is just as
Absolutely.
expensive, and the turnover is just gonna crush a business. It doesn't matter what type of business you're in, because constantly,
You're
just
absolutely
imagine
right.
having to, yeah, hire, go through the process, the interview. I'm going through that process right now myself, trying to hire more people, and it is painful. Like, we get two, three
Yes.
hundred applications, and half of them are just not even worthy of anything, and then you gotta go through and do the interviews. So it's a very tedious
Absolutely.
process, and by the time you get them onboarded, then the hard work really begins, because training them, getting them into the company
Absolutely.
culture, and then they quit in 6 months, and then you're devastated. And so
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
challenge.
Yeah, if you really look at the hiring cost, if you even look at a team member at a quick serve restaurant, okay, that, as you touched upon in California, they could be, getting $20 plus per hour. And, it really is not that cost of labor, hourly cost, but the hiring cost. If they once you hire a person, it takes at least 6 to 12 weeks to actually bring that person to fully functioning and fully contributing. So that training period is extremely critical. And today, actually, most people lose their employees in the first 90 days. So you're going through all of that training, and you're losing the candidate or the employee when they start to become productive actually in your organization. And then you have to start all over again. So this, we have done many models. It's a very big range because there are many elements in that model, but there are many studies that have been done in the industry, and the replacement cost of someone after 90 days ranges anywhere from 2,500 to 7, $8,000, depending on how many things you actually put in that model and how comprehensive you want to make that model. But that's a very wide range and very expensive process. So imagine if you're basically going through a replacement of 10, 20 people a quarter, which is very common. It really adds up very quickly.
Correct. Yeah, and especially in the restaurant space. And most people just like, I'm paying more attention to the time I'm investing, not the actual hard cost. So the money
Yes,
I can
exactly.
replace, I can make more money. I could do something. I can increase my top line revenue, and I can pay for the damages cost financially, but the damage that it causes by letting someone go or having somebody quit, then the time
At the
wasted is,
peak. Yes.
yeah, time wasted is just critical. We just let somebody go that was in a head of sales position, and yeah, we wasted essentially what, 5 months. So after 5 months of putting all the energy, resources, efforts into it,
Hmm.
it doesn't
Hmm.
work out, and it becomes really expensive. And it's the time lost that really
Absolutely.
makes
It's
it
the opportunity
devastating.
cost.
And
Yes,
the
yeah.
opportunity
And
cost,
imagine,
correct. Most people don't
yeah,
consider that.
absolutely. And imagine now in a restaurant, you're talking about a salesperson, but imagine in a restaurant where you're talking about one person, a restaurant that has 20, 30 employees working at every shift. This can really amplify or get multiplied very quickly. So
So
unless you get a handle, go ahead, please.
no, no, go on, finish up.
So unless you get a handle on this really quickly, it's like bailing water in a boat with a lot of holes in it. First thing you got to do is you have to be intentional about that culture. You have to develop the culture first, and then you hire for that culture. And you have to guard that culture with your life, basically, because it is the most important element of your labor.